Thanks a lot for joining us today. Presenting to you the outcomes of the Rabat Roadmap and the Rabat Declaration, the collective feminist agenda for people and planet. I am Shireen Talat from the MENA Fem Movement for Economic Development and Ecological Justice. And I'm happy to be here among my sisters and colleagues and friends to discuss and present and to set the roadmap for our feminist agenda together, taking advantage of the momentum of the FFD, the Finance and Development, fourth edition, and that unfortunately we all know the outcomes of it, which is very different than what we need as feminists, and ignoring the needs of people. So it was very important for us to stop the craziness of our world and to come together in Rabat from the heart of the MENA region, from the heart of the Swana region, from the heart of Africa, to put together our voice from the global south, especially from the MENA region, where we are underrepresented everywhere. I'm speaking about our Southeast Asia and North Africa countries, and from the global movement, where we act together on belief and then solidarity, to see how our world can be shifted and rewritten, but this time by our hands, not by the wealth hands, not by the capitalistic neoliberal policies that is impacting and killing us every day. And I'm coming here as an Egyptian with pain in my heart, because last week, just a couple of days ago, 19-year young ladies, a little bit older than my daughter, who is now 13. Some of them were university students, but all of them were out in the street to support their families, to earn their bread. Some of them are the breadwinners of their families. 19 young ladies. Toa, Shaima, Habiba, and others lost their lives on the road in a horrible accident, simply because of austerity measures. Simply, death killed them. And that is happening everywhere. This is why it is more than important, not only to raise our voice, but to decolonize our lives and to be able to shape and put a roadmap for the investments, at least, that the finance, the money that were gathered from our lives and our heritage, and all the trials to try to redistribute this wealth around the world failed. And for me, the last chance was this F50. So here we are, coming together from around the world, from around the MENA region, from around Africa, to present to you our roadmap and the Rabat Declaration. And on here, I want to go to my colleague, Suzan Nada, who will present the Rabat Declaration and roadmap and shed some light on the global feminist gathering that will be a biannual, hopefully a biannual meeting where we come together to be able to plan and strategize and work. So if Katie, if you don't want to add anything, Katie, I will go to Suzan. One last thing, there is translation to Arabic and English. Please go to the Chinese, unfortunately, the Chinese button to be able to listen to the Arabic. So if Katie, you don't have anything more, anything to add on this, I will go to Suzan. Thank you.
Thanks, Shireen. Nothing to add. Go ahead, Suzan.
تفضل يا سوزان.
أنا سأتحدث باللغة العربية. سعيدة بوجودي في هذا الويبينار. اجتماع الرباط الحقيقة جاء في ظل لحظة شديدة الخصوصية، حروب في المنطقة، حروب إبادة بتتم على شعب كامل، مطالبات بالتهجير، وكان هذا المؤتمر هو بمثابة خارطة نجاح ومحاولة لوضع مسار جديد لحياتنا. النسويات ليسوا ضحايا وفقط، وإنما هما طاقات متجددة دائما، وطاقات بتوعد بخير. الاجتماع الحقيقة كان يتميز بديمقراطية شديدة وشفافية شديدة، وأتاح الفرصة للجميع أنه هو يعبر عن رأيه. جميع النسويات الحاضرات والرجال الحاضرين الحقيقة تناولوا القضايا اللي بتخصنا وبتتماس مع حياتنا بشكل يومي. نحن ندفع أثمان غالية جدا من حياتنا، وأثمان لأطفالنا، وأثمان نتيجة للتقشف ونتيجة للديون المفروضة علينا. الخارطة اللي بيفرضها علينا صندوق النقد والبنك الدولي لمزيد من الديون وفرض سياسات بعينها وأجندة ثابتة لكافة الدول النامية، هي الحقيقة هو مزيد من التهميش للفقراء والمهمشين. خريطة طريق الرباط جاية بتتكلم عن كافة المهمشين وعلى تنوعها الجندري وكافة الطبقات الاجتماعية اللي عانت كثيرا من الاستعمار الأوروبي وغيره، وما زال هذا الاستعمار موجود. مطالبنا باختصار شديدة هتكون موجودة، وبأتمنى أن الجميع يتضامن معها ويتم التوقيع على هذه الخريطة باعتبارها نجاة لينا جميعا من المأزق اللي احنا موجودين فيه، ولمناهضة هذا المد اليميني المستعر والرغبة في الحروب الشديدة جدا، وزيادة من تلوث وتلويث المناخ المحيط بنا جميعا. الحقيقة خريطة الطريق بتتكلم عن العديد من النقاط، سواء على مستوى المناخ. احنا محتاجين ان يكون في مناخ عادل، بيئة مناخية عادلة، بحيث لا يتم مزيد من الاستغلال لمناطق الجنوب، سواء بتصدير مقولات حوالين بيئة خضراء وكذا، ويدفع ثمنها الجنوب مرة أخرى، سواء بإعطائنا تكنولوجيا غير متوفرة أو متوائمة مع بيئتنا المحلية، سواء باستخدام موارد المياه القليلة، أو بتصدير تكنولوجيا يدفع ثمنها مرة أخرى البلاد الأكثر فقراً وتصديرها للدول الأكثر غنى. بنتكلم عن ضرائب تصاعدية بحيث أن يتم فيها عدالة للمواطنين كافة، بحيث أنها تبقى مزيد من الضرائب على الأغنياء وأقلية على الفقراء، وهو عكس ما يتم فرضه على المنطقة ككل. بنتكلم عن عدالة جندرية بحيث أن يبقى في مساواة في وتمكين النساء من المشاركة في الاقتصاد. الحقيقة ان احنا بهذه الخريطة بنحاول نحط، وهتبقى الخريطة موجودة عندكم مكتوبة ان شاء الله، هنحاول نشاركها مع الجميع وادعو الجميع للتضامن. خطتنا لتنفيذ هذه الخريطة الطامحة، وهي الحقيقة خريطة طامحة جدا، أتمنى إن احنا نقدر نفك فعلا قيود الاستعمار المالي، ونحاول نكسر الإمبريالية اللي متغلغلة وبتسيطر على المنطقة ككل. أعتقد إن احنا عندنا خطة ممكن نبتدي بيها. المأساة اللي حاصلة في فلسطين هي وحروب الإبادة اللي بتتم في فلسطين الحقيقة محتاجة مننا وقفة، لأنها نموذج مصغر للي ممكن يحصل مع كافة شعوب العالم، وهو بالفعل بيحصل مع كافة شعوب العالم بطريقة أو بأخرى. احنا حاطين من ضمن الآليات اللي احنا ممكن نتعامل معاها المقاطعة، وبالفعل تم أخذ خطوات كبيرة جدا سواء في مصر أو في الدول العربية المختلفة أو في الدول المختلفة من المناهضين للاستعمار وللإبادة، وأخذوا خطوات مهمة جدا للمقاطعة ضد الاقتصاد الإسرائيلي والمدعوم من الإمبريالية العالمية. عندنا خطط بتمكين النساء بخلق تعاونيات ما بين النسويات بعضهم الآخر، وخلق اقتصاد جديد بيقوم على عدالة اقتصادية وبيئية، بيقوم على الاستدامة. هعرض بشكل سريع جدا المطالب بتاعتنا من خارطة الطريق في خطوط عريضة. بنتكلم عن كسر قيود الدين والاستعمار المالي، وبنتكلم عن محاسبة مؤسسات الدولية سواء صندوق النقد الدولي أو البنك الدولي أو المؤسسات الدولية بما فيها البنك الأوروبي للإعمار. بنتكلم عن وقف سياسات التقشف كأداة استعمارية لضعف الخدمات الأساسية. بنتكلم عن محاولة لسيادة دول الجنوب وخلق اقتصاديات جديدة. بناء نظام عالمي نسوي بديل. رفض النمو الاقتصادي اللي بيقوم على الربحية وفقط. إنشاء اقتصاد نسوي يعزز الاقتصاد التعاوني والمحلي. بنتكلم عن ديمقراطية اقتصادية تشارك فيها الشعوب في صنع القرار، وليس فقط اقتصارها على النخب الرأسمالية والإمبريالية. عايزين عقد اجتماعي جديد يقوم على حياة كريمة لجميع دون استثناء. اعتماد نماذج تنموية بديلة لا تقوم على الاستخراج والاستغلال. توفير بيانات شفافة ومنصفة، لأن الحقيقة في احتكار شديد جدا للبيانات، وده ما بيتيحش لينا إن احنا حتى نتقدم بمحاسبة ومطالبة مؤسسات التمويل الدولية بالقيام بدورها ومراقبة المشاريع. بناء تضامن جنوب جنوب، والحقيقة دي يعني أنا شايفة أنها لو ده تم هيكون في نجاح لينا جميعا. مساءلة الشمال العالمي بما ارتكبوه من فظائع، وسواء من خلال حروب سواء من خلال هيمنة اقتصادية. كمان بيعاد فرض السيطرة من خلال مجتمع مدني أوروبي وشمالي بيحاول يتحكم في الأجندة الخاصة بالمجتمع المدني في الجنوب. دعم السلام العادل في فلسطين والسودان واليمن وسائر المنطقة. عايزين نظام مالي عادل ينهي التفاوت الثروة، ولا يمكن تحقيق العدالة بدون تفكيك هيمنة الدول الغربية على العلم والعلاقات القوة والمؤسسات المالية العالمية. وقف الهيمنة على موارد الجنوب. نرفض النظام الضريبي الحالي وبنطالب بنظام ضريبي تصاعدي. ضمان تمويل الخدمات زي الصحة، زي ما كلمت زميلتنا شيرين حوالين إن في فرض لآليات الصرف في الدول المقترضة، ومنها عمل منتجعات وعمل كباري وعمل طرق سريعة، برغم إن ده ممكن يبقى بيؤدي لوفاة العديد من المواطنين في ذهابهم لعملهم والعودة منه. والحادثة بتاعت 19 فتاة ليست الحادثة الوحيدة، النهاردة الصبح في حادثة أخرى مماثلة نتيجة لسوء الإدارة. بنطالب بعدالة مناخية تشارك فيها المحليات ويشارك فيها جميع المواطنين. بنتكلم عن مطالبتنا بعدالة. في النهاية احنا بندعو كل القوى التقدمية والشعوب الحرة للانضمام لهذا التحرك العالمي من أجل بناء عالم عادل ومستدام ومتحرر من الهيمنة والاستغلال. شكرا.
شكرا جدا يا سوزان. احنا بنطالب بعالم عادل متحرر من الهيمنة والاستغلال. وهنا هنسمع مداخلات من زميلات أخريات بإدارة زميلتي وشريكتي في الجريمة كيتي توبن. فكيتي the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Shireen, and thank you, Suzan, for introducing all of us to our meeting that we had in Rabat and the very important demands and analysis that have come out. What Suzan shared was written by a drafting team of participants from the Rabat Convening, all of them based in the MENA region. And we'll be sharing the final declaration with all of you very soon, within the next couple of weeks, in both English and Arabic, with a process for endorsement. And we would be very grateful if this document were to be useful to all of us in our collective advocacy. So to hear more about that collective advocacy and the very consequential moment we find ourselves in, we're going to have a panel. My name is Katie Tobin. As Shireen said, I've been very honored to work alongside Shireen and colleagues at MENA Fem Movement to pull off the Rabat Convening, and also in general on our work at the nexus of economic justice, climate justice, and gender justice over the past few years. In particular, it's wonderful to see so many of you here, and please do keep introducing yourselves in the chat. It's lovely to see the range of colleagues that are with us from all over the world. So we're going to have a panel discussion that kind of places the declaration from Rabat and the demands that Suzan just shared in the context of, in particular, the 4th Conference on Financing for Development, currently ongoing in Sevilla in Spain, as Shireen had mentioned. But also we have colleagues here who have just come from the UNFCCC intercessional meetings in Bonn, Germany, and the climate agenda and the financing for development agenda are kind of the two anchors that we've been looking at in terms of how we want to advance a structural feminist collective advocacy agenda. So our speakers are going to give us their takes on the question, what does it look like to work towards structural change from a feminist perspective in the context of both FFD and the climate agenda? So they'll be talking about fiscal justice, about why we need to end debt and austerity, as the tragic example from Egypt illustrates so clearly, and why we need to achieve climate justice and what that shared struggle looks like, given the real and increasing challenges we face in our multilateral arena at the moment. So I'll put the names in the chat and we will spotlight all of them as well, but we're going to hear first from María Ron Balsera, who's the Executive Director of the Center for Economic and Social Rights. Then we'll hear from Haneen Shaheen from Nature Resources and Climate Protection, Fatna Afid from CDT Maroc, Grace Wambui Arina from Tax Justice Network Africa, and Gina Cortes Valderrama is an independent climate activist and degrowth scholar. So this is a really incredible panel. All of them were involved in some way and or present in our convening in Rabat, and all are involved in either FFD or the Bonn. We're in Bonn for the climate negotiation. So colleagues, thank you so much for being here with us. You each have about 5 minutes to share your perspectives. And then for those of you who are listening, please do enter your questions in the Q&A box, but we'll also have a moment for you to raise your hand and actually speak and join the discussion. So start thinking of your questions and responses now. So Maria, over to you again, Maria from CESR. Thanks so much for being with us.
First, before you start, Maria.
Oh, sorry.
Maria, before you start, I have to say that there is.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, there is interpretation.
I'm joining you from Seville, from the FFC4.
Maria?
I'm really busy at the moment. And unfortunately, we are in a different
يوجد ترجمة
pavilion to
عربية.
where all the
Sorry, Maria. I think if you just pause for 1 second, Shireen's just introducing
we need to tell folks that we have translation to Arabic.
Yeah.
Please go to the Chinese button on the bottom of the screen. يوجد ترجمة إلى العربية، فقط استخدموا انقروا على التشاينيز أو الصينية للعربية. شكرا.
Okay. Thank you so much, Shireen, and thanks again, Maria. Sorry about that. Please start over and over to you. Thank you.
No worries at all. It really is a pleasure to be with you online. I'm currently connecting from Seville, from Spain, from the FFP4, and we are very much in solidarity with all our friends and sisters in Egypt, all our friends and sisters in the Swana region and in the global south and beyond, because this is a collective fight. And I'm joining you from the FFP4. We are aware of the privilege that this is, the seats that we are occupying, have the responsibility to speak for all of you who are not here, for all of you who are not even in this webinar. We really need to get our voices heard. Unfortunately, we are in a complete different building to where most of these decisions are being made. This morning in the plenary, probably you saw the keynote speakers, they were all men, except for a woman, right? And they were really pushing for really this mantra of like fiscal consolidation, of the unlocking the private investments, etc. And even Ajay Banga was just saying that poverty is a state of mind. This is not the first time we hear him say that. So this is what we really have against us. But but as we know, across the globe, gender injustice is deeply, deeply embedded in the rules that govern our economy. From tax systems that overburden women to austerity measures that dismantle essential care services. Macroeconomic policies are not gender neutral. We know that. They are shaped by the histories of colonialism and neoliberalism and patriarchy. And I'm really happy to say that today the Center for Economic and Social Rights, the organization that I represent, is launching a Decoding Gender Injustice together with the Third World Network. I will be sharing these resources online, and we really encourage you to have a look because there is hope and they cannot take that away from us. We really need to be joining forces to demand gender justice. Thank you very much, Katie. Thank you very much, Shireen, and all of you.
Thank you so much, Maria, for joining us from Seville. We really appreciate your analysis and the resources that CESR contributes. So we'll look forward to reading that new one on decoding gender injustice. Thank you. We'll let you know if there's any questions directed to you. And next, I'm going to turn to Haneen Shaheen. So thanks so much, Haneen, for joining us from Bonn and then from Seville. So over to you.
Yes, hello everyone. It's a pleasure to be with you all. I think I will speak in Arabic as well. فمساء الخير عليكم من مدينة إشبيلية في أسبانيا. أنا موجودة على هامش ال FFT في المساحة الخاصة للمجتمع المدني، وكنت موجودة في بون قبل ما أجي هنا في ال SP's 62 sessions تحت ال UNFCCC. بصراحة ما شاهدناه في بون هو تقريبا اللي بنشهده في ال FFD من التضييق على المساحة الموجودة للسيفل سوسايتي ومدى تفاعلنا ومدى وجودنا في المساحة الخاصة بالمفاوضات والتفاعل معها. للأسف بون السنة دي كانت يعني عادة المساحة دي بما إن هي موجودة تحت الأمم المتحدة المفروض كانت بيبقى فيه قدر من القدرة على التعبير عن الرأي، التدخل، حتى وجودنا كobservers كملاحظين لسير المفاوضات كان دايما بيبقى أوسع وأشمل. السنة دي بما ان المجتمع المدني دايما كان بيحمل رايه ان مفيش عداله مناخيه من غير حقوق انسان وانهاء الاباده وانهاء الحروب في المنطقه، فده ادى الى زياده الخناق على وجود المجتمع المدني جوه المساحات دي ووجود الفعاليات اللي احنا بنعملها. وده كان شيء بارز جدا. يعني مثلا ما كناش نقدر نتكلم خالص على الحصار اللي موجود على على غزة، ولا نقدر نتكلم على زيادة التمويل الخاص بتمويل السلاح اللي موجود دلوقتي مقارنة بالحصولنا على التمويل الخاص بالمناخ. كل كلمات كتيرة قوي تمنع ان احنا كمجتمع مدني نقولها جوه السيشنز او جوه المقر المؤتمر. سريعا البون سيشنز اللي هي الى حد ما مرتبطه ومتصله بالاف اف دي دلوقتي، وبتقول انديكيتور، بتدينا كده انديكيتورز الاف اف دي ممكن يكون شكلها عامل ازاي. للاسف ما كانتش ناجحه على كل الاصعده. بون سيشنز غاب عنها التمويل كما هو العاده. الكول فور فاينانس ما كانش موجود بما يتوجب عليه ان يبقى موجود. البون السنه دي كانت بتركز على 4 ملفات: الجاست ترانزيشن، الانتقال العادل، الجي جي اي اللي هو الجلوبال جول اوف ادابتيشن، الهدف العام للتكيف، الجلوبال ستوك تيك، والفاينانس او التمويل. الجاست ترانزيشن نجحنا في ان هو يبقى محطوط على اولويه اجنده المفاوضات في بلم في في كوب 30. ودي تعتبر من الحاجات النجاحات اللي تمت. الميكانيزم اللي تم عرضه وتم الموافقة عليه تقريبا 90% منه هو الميكانيزم اللي قدموه المجتمع المدني ككروس كونستيتوينسيز، يعني بمختلف مجموعات العمل في المجتمع المدني كانت متفقة على ميكانيزم، والميكانيزم ده هو اللي تم الموافقة عليه يعني بنسبة 90%. ودي كانت حاجة كويسة جدا. هنشوف لو تم الموافقة عليه في بلم ده هيكون نجاح ساحق للمجتمع المدني وللجراس روتس. الجي جي اي للاسف غاب، اللي هو الجلوبال جول اوف ادابتيشن، غاب عنه التمويل والمعطيات اللي هتحدد ازاي بنحدد التكيف. اتفقوا عليه في الاخر كده بطريقه بصراحه كيوتك جدا، بطريقه عشوائيه جدا، وكان الاجتماعات طولت قوي في اخر يومين. بس طلعوا ان برضو للاسف التمويل هيكون من البرايفت سيكتور بشكل كبير، والتمويل عباره عن موبيلايزيشن، مش موبيلايزيشن يعني ممكن يخش فيه البرايفت سيكتور القطاع الخاص والديت الدين، مش جاي كجرانت من الحكومات، مش جاي كتمويل دايركت من الحكومات. للاسف بقيه البنود الجلوبال ستوك تيك والفاينانس ما فيش اي تقدم. التكنولوجي طبعا، التكنولوجي ترانسفير كان نيجوشيشنز ميته، ما وصلناش منها في اي حاجه. الفود في شويه تقدمات هتحصل تكمله للنيجوشيشنز في الشهور اللي جايه لحد ما نوصل لبلان. ده هوصل بسرعة. ده بيربطنا ازاي بالاف اف دي؟ طالما ما فيش تمويل عادل للمناخ عادة هنفضل تكملة، لان اي تمويلات ليها علاقة بالمناخ، اي تمويلات ليها علاقة فيها جاستس هتبقى تحت الدت وتحت البرايفت سيكتور. فده بيقول لنا ان الاف اف دي يعني لو ما طلع لناش ميكانيزم يساعدنا في التمويل المناخي العادل مش هنوصل لحاجة. طريقة عمل الجي 20 والجي 7 اللي بيبقوا مسؤولين عن حركة الفلوس جوه المناخ، مفاوضات المناخ، لحد دلوقتي متحكمين في الناراتيف بتاع ان البرايفت سيكتور هو اللي هيفاينانس. وده معناه ان كل قرش هيتحط محتاج يبقى قدامه ريتيرن اوف انفستمنت. ولما بنتكلم عن المسؤوليه التاريخيه ولما بنتكلم على تمويل المناخ مفيش حاجه اسمها ريتيرن اوف انفستمنت، وان ده حقنا كجلوبال ساوث على الجلوبال نورث ان انتوا تدفعوا ثمن الاضرار اللي احنا بنمر بيها. احنا متوقعين ان الاف اف دي بصراحه الخذل والخذلان اللي حصل في بون بيدينا انديكيتور ان ده تقريبا اللي هيحصل في الاف اف دي. عدم حصولنا على بادجيت، عدم وصولنا مساحه الاف اف دي، ده بيقول ان النيجوشيشنز مش هتبقى عادله، مش هتبقى انكلوسيف. بس احنا قاعدين اهو، قاعدين في سيفيا وهنشوف ايه اللي هيحصل، وموجودين في الهب بتاع السيفل سوسايتي. فلو حد عايز يجي ينضم لينا، احنا بنعمل مارشز وبنعمل كميه سايد ايفنتس ضخمه جدا. اتمنى ان انتوا تتابعوها، وهقف هنا وجاهزه للرد على اي سؤال. شكرا.
Thank you so much, Haneen. It's so valuable to hear your analysis of the similarities in the way the narratives, these dominant narratives on private investment, on the unwillingness of the global north to take responsibility, show up in both the climate space and the FFD space. And it's part of the rationale for why we need alternative spaces and alternative opportunities to organize ourselves and find solidarity in different ways. And that brings us to our following speaker, Fatna Afid, who's a very well-known union organizer from Morocco. And so we'd love to hear your analysis, Fatna, perhaps making the connection to workers' rights and anything else you'd like to share. So thanks, Fatna, very much. Over to you.
مساء الخير. سعيدة بالحضور في هذا اللقاء المهم، من حيث أولا نلتقي مرة أخرى بعد اللقاء الناجح المؤتمر في الرباط، وأنا سعيدة بذلك الملتقى. بالنسبة للعرض الذي تحدثت معي الأخت كيتي، العرض هو يعني حديث عن يعني كشعار كبير من أجل عدالة اقتصادية وجندرية في سياق العمل اللائق. سأحاول أن أقدم مقاربة نقابية من منطقة شمال إفريقيا والشرق الأوسط. إذا أنا أعتبر أن المداخلات التي سبق
Yeah. Hopefully her connection will come back and we can come back to her. Let's just give it a couple more seconds to see if she reconnects. Otherwise, we can move to the next speaker and then come back. Yeah. Okay. We are now going to hear, and then we'll come back to Fatna after that, from Grace Wambui Arina from Tax Justice Network Africa. Grace, we would love to hear a little bit about where tax comes into these discussions and what you see as the priorities in the FFD space, and any reflections you'd like to share from Rabat. So Grace, over to you.
Thanks, Casey. Thank you for the invitation, and I'm happy to be here. I hope you can hear me clearly. Please confirm.
Yes. Yes. Thanks.
All right. First and foremost, I would like to begin by stating that if we were to summarize what the Rabat Roadmap is, it is generally a call to justice, and not only for the MENA region, but for the wider Africa and the global South in general. And as was stated earlier, the roadmap has come at an opportune time in the global state of affairs. And it is crucial to transforming the global economic system because it focuses on the linking from existing hegemonic models and rebuilding international relations. Therefore, solidarity is extremely necessary. As you all know, the prevailing neoliberal financial framework is fundamentally rooted in extractivism, a process that extracts wealth from the global south and accumulates it in the north. This extraction predominantly takes place through illicit financial flows, which compasses tax abuse, such as avoidance and evasion, as just a few examples. Moreover, the global financial system is controlled by international financial institutions, which make decisions about nearly all macroeconomic policies and have significant influence in maintaining the current financial status quo. These institutions impose very harsh austerity measures, attach strict conditions to aid and loans, and insert damaging clauses into trade and investment treaties. In response to this, the roadmap categorically rejects the ongoing capitalist colonial model that plunders and destroys our environment and deprives us of our rights. To quote from the draft of the map, which I am sure will be shared, true justice can only be achieved through liberation of our economic and governance systems from the grip of imperialist powers and rebuilding a world order based on sovereignty, solidarity, and gender justice. With respect to tax, for tax systems to be truly just, they must be based on anti-capitalist redistribution of wealth. They must be decolonized, that is, dismantle the current colonial era policies that favor multinationals over local economies. They must be focused on bolstering public services and social infrastructure, and they must be non-exploitative, meaning that multinational corporations cannot engage in tax abuses such as evasion and avoidance, and the loopholes that create the same must also be closed. And tax systems must also support women's economic empowerment, which includes those in low-wage employment and those who undertake paid and unpaid care work by acknowledging and valuing their economic contributions. A feminist approach to economic justice is a must because it promotes inclusive economic growth and challenges the present dynamics of the global power structures. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Grace. Really appreciate the additional, filling in what's actually in the Rabat Declaration and linking that to the tax demands in particular. As we know, this year with the UN Tax Convention negotiations resuming in August, it's a hugely important topic and one of the only places we've seen actual progress. So really appreciate that analysis. Fatna, welcome back. Back over to you if you want to start over or pick up from where you are. It's totally up to you. Thank you very much. Over to you.
شكرا كاتي. أنا لا أعرف، بدأت الحديث وانقطع الإنترنت، لا أعرف ما السبب. إذن قلت بأننا ننطلق من سياق إقليمي معروف بالأزمة الاقتصادية والديون المتراكمة وتوسيع في سياسة التقشف وتفكيك الخدمات، ناهيك عن النزاعات المسلحة وانتهاكات الحقوق الإنسان المتزايدة في منطقتنا. إذن في هذا السياق تتعمق هشاشة النساء العاملات، خصوصا العاملات في القطاعات الغير مهيكلة والمهاجرات، وهناك حرمان كبير من أبسط الحقوق في الحماية الاجتماعية والأجر العادل والكرامة في أماكن العمل. إذن نحن كنقابات في المنطقة لا بديل عن النضال من أجل العمل اللائق والعدالة الاقتصادية رغم كل التحديات السياسية والمضايقات. إذن النقابات في منطقتنا هي مطروحة عليها بشكل قوي، واليوم قبل أي وقت مضى رفع مطالب المتعلقة بالمساواة في الأجور وربط الحد الأدنى بالأجور بكلفة المعيشة والتصدي لخصوصة القطاعات الحيوية ضمان الحماية الاجتماعية ورفض اتفاقيات التجارة الحرة، هذه التجارة التي تضر بالعمال وتعمق التبعية الاقتصادية. إذن نؤكد أن العمل اللائق ليس فقط شغل بأي أجر، وإنما هو حق في شغل مستدام مؤمن اجتماعيا ومحترم للكرامة الإنسانية. كذلك مطلب العدالة الجندرية هو يبقى مطلبا أساسيا في صلب المعركة النقابية، لأنه لا يمكن تحقيق عدالة اقتصادية دون عدالة جندرية ودون يعني تمكين النساء من حقهن في فرص عمل يعني جيدة، ورفض ومواجهة كل أشكال العنف والتحرش، وكذلك الاعتراف بقيمة العمل وخصوصا العمل غير المأجور، وإدماج النساء في صنع القرار داخل النقابات وداخل المجتمع، وهو نضال يعني مستمر من أجل رعاية ممولة من طرف الدولة. كذلك مسألة العدالة المناخية هي مسألة أساسية أن نتعاطى كنقابات يعني من منظور نسوي نقابي لهذه العدالة المناخية في إطار ما نسميه بالانتقال العادل، وهو ضروري لإدماج مبادئ العدالة المناخية في العمل النقابي وتعزيز مشاركة النساء. وتبقى نقطة أساسية هي المسألة التي طرحت أختنا شيرين، هي مسألة التضامن الإقليمي والدولي. ففي إطار هذا تصاعد يعني للاستعمار وتصاعد الاستبداد، وهي مناسبة لنجدد تضامننا مع الشعب الفلسطيني في معركته من أجل الحرية والتحرر. إذن لابد من تعزيز هذا التضامن بين النقابات في المنطقة، وهو يعني تضامن بين كل يعني التحالفات في الحركات النسوية والبيئية وحركات المهاجرين فالتحول يعني الجذري الذي يأتي من مؤسسات رسمية لا يمكن أن يساهم في مساواة حقيقية وفي السيادة وفي التنمية كما نريدها وفي الكرامة. ختاما أريد أن أؤكد أن تحقيق العمل اللائق والعدالة الجندرية والاقتصادية في منطقتنا ليس حلما يعني مستحيلا، بل هو مسار نضالي جماعي يتطلب منا جميعا الوحدة والتنظيم والتجديد في الخطاب والأدوات، والربط بين النضالات اليومية للعمال والنضال الأوسع من أجل نظام اقتصادي بديل ينصف الشعوب وليس فقط الأسواق. وشكرا لكم.
Shukran, Fatna. Wonderful to hear your analysis and your reminder of the role of unions in advocating for all types of justice, something that we've seen in every meaningful win, or every time that the people have prevailed over the interests of corporate power, has largely been due to collective organizing and unions. So thank you for that reminder as well. It's something that we think a lot about also in the climate movement, in the efforts to advocate for a just transition, and one that really, as you were saying, is not just about moving away from fossil fuels, but a much more holistic understanding of what a just economy looks like in the place of workers within that. Also within challenging the way the capitalist economy is so intertwined with the militarized colonial economy, and the repercussions of that being actual genocide and starvation, as we're seeing in Palestine, and also decades of war and subjugation, for example, in the Congo, where so many of the minerals required for this transition are going to come from. So our last speaker for our panel is Gina Cortes Valderrama, who does a lot of work on just transition as well as degrowth. So Gina, we're really happy to have you with us, and over to you.
Thank you so much, Katie, and to all my fellow panelists here. And I think that you have done as well a very good bridge to what I'd like to bring, and is part of the conversation that we had as well in Rabat. Also went deeper into diving how there has been this epistemic colonialization, this epistemic extractivism that has plunder as well the territories in many ways, but also our narratives, our policies, our imaginaries. And when we are going to advance into those transitions, how is then this need to go deeper, to this coloniality that has shaped different systems of power. And that speaks to everything, that speaks to our own notions and the notions that are now so much represented in the different debates on just transitions, but as well also questioning the narratives that speak about peace and that has been part of the conversation that we had in Rabat. And what we are also saying currently, and the context of the Rabat meeting, but also the geopolitical context in which the far right is increasing the violence, like really truly physical violence as well, against women's rights, against the gender non-conforming people's rights, and at the same time putting into more contrast anti-migration laws, is bringing more and more and more and more and more this urgency to have an anti-imperialist approach, to also understand how white supremacy interacts with the different ways in which also industrial policies are being framed, in the way in which also countries are being imposed different transitions in the same name of that progress that was imposed to us at some point, and how that is perpetuating these different chains of dependency. And what we have been discussing in the Rabat gathering, but also what we are moving towards as feminists, not only in the climate space, but also in the economic space, and also seeing as well how feminists are also pushing even more strongly in other spaces, such as in the degrowth spaces, is to look for this sovereignty that comes to countries for the South, a sovereignty that speaks on economic justice, on energy justice, a sovereignty to speak about our own framing and understanding of development that responds to the national needs of the people from the South, that can come as well with different strategies and policies, and that alliances and coalitions that are needed. And this is something that is so very well connected as well with the conversations happening in the climate space, for example, in Just Transitions, where this is a space in which many countries are seeing the opportunity to bring justice to the Paris Agreement and its implementation in different ways. And the way to do so as well, and we have seen it as Haneen was commenting at the beginning, is how we see the so-called developing countries, or the countries from the South, coming together in that need of a platform, in that need of a mechanism, in that need of a space where synergies can be framed, where this solidarity that we're speaking from the South to the South can also be strengthened in a way that is looking towards accomplishing that right for development. This right to development means not perpetuating these imposed and important notions of development that keep on plundering and destructing, but is also defining that sovereignty that is so much needed in our own terms, with our own institutions, with our rules as well. And these are conversations that are very important, and where feminists have been doing as well a good connections, understanding the connections from how the far right pushback on what we were saying on women's rights and anti-migration laws is so much connected on the way that capitalism is sustained. A capitalism that is sustained precisely on the unpaid, unvalued, unrecognized care, domestic, and subsistence work that is done by these groups, racialized foremost. So by understanding the transitions from a feminist perspective, we are truly understanding a more deeper anti-colonial, a more deepened anti-imperialist agenda to move us towards. And what is now then as well part of the conversations that we are having, not only in the climate, not only in the economic, and not only in the degrowth spaces, but looking ourselves beyond the confinements of the UN spaces, is to understand that there are many different political strategies and actions that need to be taken. One of them is for us in the South to start connecting, to start nurturing from our thinkings, from our readers, from our revolutionaries, see what is happening in Burkina Faso, see what is happening in other countries where there is already a strong pushback against that imperialist regime that has framed so much these dependency chains. And at the same time, what is the role to de-link, the ideas as well, how are we going to be de-linking the South from the North, from that export-based nature? And in other sense, and in another sense, at the same time, is which is the responsibility and the role as well for the North. And that is also a parallel political strategy that needs to happen, not only from our governments, not only from the institutions, but also from the organizations, activists, and those that call the allies as well from the South, in which they also push on the ground, in the belly of the empire, for degrowing these harmful economies, such as the military complex. We are not connecting as much as we should be doing with the military complex that has been spending 3 trillion for military spending in the last year. And something as well that needs to be done is to think about seriously on how we are going to move from the solidarity narratives and how we are going to be arriving to really have an impact on the material reality of the people from the South. Because neutrality is just only protecting impunity, because silence is only perpetuating the complicity of the genocides and the many, many conflicts that we are having right now. So this Rabat gathering has also been a very, very, very strong call for different feminists, for organizations, for NGO, for different people to then take a serious responsibility and start enacting in their own countries those different calls that come from the South. And I think I need to stop here. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Gina. That was super clear, and we really appreciate your sharing of a little bit of the kind of political undertones, or not undertones, of political spotlights that came out in the Rabat meeting, and the need to connect all of these different manifestations of the imperial capitalist economy to actually talk about what's required in terms of solidarity from the global North, how military spending fits into the picture, what are some actual alternatives like degrowth, like delinking for the global South, that we as feminists need to be putting at the forefront. So thank you so much to all of our panelists. We now have some time. We have a decent chunk of time, actually, because everyone's been very disciplined. So thank you for discussion. So we have some really excellent questions in the Q&A box already. So I encourage the panelists to have a look at those. And anyone else who'd like to share a question, you can speak it out, even if someone who already put a question in the chat, if you want to raise your question verbally, that's totally fine. I think yeah, and then after the Q&A, we have 2 respondents. We have Alay Talbi from the Tunisian Forum for Economic and Social Rights, and Trisha Precious Abwoli from Akina Mamawa Africa. So we have 2 more speakers coming, so stay tuned for those. Who would like to go first in terms of the Q&A? I think you can raise your hands and I can unmute you.
I could start with one, Katie.
Sure. Yeah, go ahead.
So I have seen one of the questions that speak about how can we replicate a different pressure, no, like continuing with the boycott that we are seeing from the BDS movement of Palestine, that not supporting Palestine, but also how can we keep on making some pressure in other different ways. I would like perhaps to bring 2 different examples. One of them is, and to bring as well some light in how we are also lacking a more strong and direct action from the North. One of them, and I put the example of Burkina Faso, because I think that this has also put into the radar the continuity of colonialism, particularly in Africa in this case, with the continuation of the CFA franc, you know, like with this imposition of continue with the currency coming from France, depending as well, and keep on draining as well the economic, the financial infrastructure of Africa, and shaping this dependency, even though there was perhaps some independence in a political way, but how do we see this being still the ties? And something that I find very curious is how this confrontation or this call of African countries to break these chains of dependency with France, particularly with the franc, yes, come very strongly from Africa comrades, but what are we seeing actually from colleagues in France? what are we seeing as well from colleagues in the European Union? How are they calling as well for breaking this coloniality or this continuum through the currency, through these different structures? And this is something that we are not seeing the enough, let's say, pressure, no? And it's just a simple example on what is needed to happen is not only on having peoples from the South shouting it, crying at it, but also what we need is as well that material solidarity, let's say, but I will call it more responsibility from folks in the North to confront their governments, to confront their institutions, to cut immediately that continuum in that colonial regime. That is one example. And another example is that I also brought in the Rabat gathering, and is, for example, the global energy embargo on Palestine. This is something as well that brings together a very good way in which different people's activists, advocates from the South that are located in other geographies have united following the call of Palestinian trade unions, of Palestinian workers that were saying, workers, you have power. And that power is also on how we can, from different spaces, block the way in which this genocide is being fueled, literally fueled, with the coal that is coming to Israel to fuel for that genocide. And these united trade unions and activists from Colombia, from South Africa, where they start pushing their governments to come with decrees to stop, like the exports of coal to Israel, and to start making the connections with other different groups that have been advocating for this in different spaces and throughout different regions. And something that this has also sparked is a more tangible collaboration, for example, in countries such as Switzerland and countries such as Germany, where then the other different groups that have been advocating there are starting to bring more attention to the space and to call out the governments. But this has to come from many different spaces. This has to come from many different bubbles. So this is a way how we are connecting the calls from the South, not by instrumentalizing their voices, not by extracting their epistemologies and imaginaries, rather by listening to what are their needs, what are their demands, and then enacting that in the centers of power by blocking the governments. And I think that these are examples of how we need to keep on putting the pressure, how we need to start mapping corporate capture in different ways, and then have more direct action in many places. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Gina. That's super clear, and really appreciate the answer to that really good question. I think these were exactly the kinds of conversations we were having in Rabat, and that we need to keep having in terms of what are the actual examples we can build on, and what are the concrete actions that we can take according to our differentiated positionalities. I'm going to take two from the chat. First, Ghislaine Saisonu, and then Elaine Zuckerman, and then Shireen, and then maybe we'll have time for a couple more. So Ghislaine, over to you.
Okay, good afternoon. I'm Dr. Justin. Did you hear me?
Yes.
Are you hearing? Yes, okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I just want to join my voice to what my colleague just say now. We are committed also to support every action who can help to spread the situation, and then to mobilize people around the need for rights that we are talking about, because what we are talking about, it is a human right, it is a right to have access to many things. And then I can assure you that in these months, the trade union movement globally in the 5 continents, we take some resolution, and then we put it in our international conference this year in June in Geneva, that we raise all of the issues that you are talking about. And also, I can also assure you that around climate change, trade union hold a position that we need as African to have our perspective, and then to work together and the vision to move for the better world. And lastly, what I want to say, we are also committed to spread the vision of feminists through trade union leaders. That's, you know, that we are social partners, and anything that people need to discuss at national level, we are there. Consultation and all of the lobby and advocacy, we are around. That is why I'm take time to be part of this webinar, and I appreciate your position. I think that tomorrow I also going to be with Akina Mama colleague on the topic concerning what are going to be during the CEVI meeting, where we are also going to raise some part of the issues that you are talking about. So, dear ladies, we are together.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate that intervention and the broader context as well. We're going to turn to Elaine Zuckerman and then Suzan Nada and then Shereen. So Elaine, you should be able to speak now.
Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Yeah, since a few people speak, thank you everybody very much for your wonderful interventions that I think are reflect that we have reached, our movement has reached a really strong anti-imperialist, anti-dependency, colonial analysis from a feminist point of view. Several of you have raised BDS, and since it's something I've been involved in with Jewish Voice for Peace for many years, 20 years we've been involved, I thought it might be interesting for some of you to hear examples of our BDS campaign. So in the earlier days, a number of years ago, we first went after we usually have one or two products that we go after at any given time. So in the early days, a long time ago, we went after the Israeli-owned SodaStream that was, it's that sparkling water mechanism. I've never owned it, but it's sold widely in the Western world. People buy it and they make sparkling water at home. And we got it off the shelves of Macy's and Target and some other organizations by continuously protesting in front of these stores. And then we went after HP, which runs the turnstiles that don't allow Palestinians to move from one point to another, those digital turnstiles. Then we went after Puma, which is an athletic wear organization that has manufacturing in the settlements in the West Bank. We went after Airbnb, which had a lot of rentals in the illegal settlements. And now I thought I'd tell you that our biggest campaign right now in BDS is going after Israeli bonds. Many different governments in the US at the state and the municipal levels buy or sell, excuse me, sell Israeli bonds, raise money for Israel through their bonds. And we have several different states that we're going after now, and each of them provide billions of dollars to Israel for their genocidal activities through selling Israeli bonds here. So we are going after that right now. So these are all examples of practical BDS campaigns that Jewish Voice for Peace is leading, and I thought maybe it would add a little explanation or color to this discussion on BDS. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Elaine. Really always appreciate your perspectives, also as an example of the kinds of direct action that we want to see from those of us based in the global north. So thank you for being an example to us there and for sharing that additional information. Next, we have Suzan Nada, and then Sebastian, and then Eleanor, and I think we might have to close the list after that. So Suzan.
طيب أنا هتكلم عن آليات للتنسيق المشترك ما بيننا، لأن احنا الحقيقة بنواجه حكومات تابعة، وبنواجه إمبريالية متعمقة المرسخة تواجدها، سواء من خلال فرض سياسات مالية واقتصاد أو من خلال تعمد تهميش القضايا الحقيقية وإعادة سردية منطلقاتنا الجنوبية. وبالتالي أنا هتكلم عن نقطتين. أولا النقطة الأولانية كانت في علشان ندي أمل لنفسنا، كان في تنظيم لقافلتين مصريتين بالجهود الشعبية وقدرت إنها توصل، وده كان في بداية حرب الإبادة على فلسطين، وقدرت إنها تشارك وتوصل الدعم للفلسطينيين. الحاجة التانية اللي هتكلم عنها المقاطعة. أعتقد إن إحنا بحاجة شديدة جدا إن إحنا ننظم شكل ونوع المقاطعة، بمعنى إن على BDS في أكتر من 100 صنف تقريبا ممكن نقاطع. والمقاطعة ميزتها إنها حركة شعبوية وفيها تعبئة شديدة جدا للشعوب، بمعنى إن ده فعل فردي بيتم الإجماع عليه من الشعوب المختلفة اللي رافضة هذا النوع من الاستبداد وهذه الأنواع من الإبادة اللي بتتم صوت وصورة أمام الجميع. وبالتالي هو ده النوع البنى اللي أنا شايفة إن هو ممكن يبقى بنى تنظيمي حقيقي للناس، سواء من حيث التوعية، سواء من حيث بنى نظام يبقى بيجابه هذه الدوامة من الإمبريالية ومن الاستعمار ومن التحكم ومن السيطرة في الشعوب وتهميشهم وزيادة إفقارهم. فبالتالي أنا مع فكرة إن إحنا نبقى بنركز كل فترة، وده هتكلم عنه بشكل أعمق، كل فترة نركز على منتج أو منتجين. أنا بقترح أولا، أنا الزميلة اللي اتكلمت قبلي بوما أصدرت بيان بتتبرأ فيه وبتعلن إنها لم تعد تتعامل مع الكيان الصهيوني. فأنا بقترح إن إحنا من خلال تنسيقياتنا، وأنا شايفة إن ده برضو أحد المهام اللي واقعة على عاتقنا من الرود ماب بتاعة الرباط، خريطة طريق للرباط، إن إحنا نبقى في تنسيق عالي، بمعنى إن إحنا لو ركزنا في خطوة المقاطعة مثالا على منتج أو 2 أو 3، ده بيبان أثره بشكل أسرع. وده عن تجربة، لأن إحنا مثلا في مصر لما ركزنا على منتج نسلة وعلى منتج، ونسلة بالمناسبة هي يعني ثالث شركة ملوثة للبيئة، فاحنا هنا بنضرب في 2 مع بعض، حاجتين مع بعض، تلوث البيئي وحروب الإبادة. لو ركزنا على نسلة، ركزنا في مصر على نسلة وعلى بيبسي وعلى لوريال وبالفعل وعلى ماكدونالدز وكنتاكي. وبالتالي فعلا المنتجات دي، يعني في محلات كنتاكي قفل، في ماكدونالدز قفل، في بيبسي ابتدت تعمل عروض علشان تبقى بتعوض الخسائر اللي حاصله فيها. فانا في رايي ان احنا من خلال اجتماعنا في الرباط ان احنا نبتدي ننسق، سواء للمقاطعه، سواء للون الدعايه اللي احنا هنشتغل عليه، سواء القضايا. احنا عندنا في مصر مثلا في صعوبة شديدة جدا جدا ان احنا نبقى بنعبر عن رأينا بشكل واضح، او ان احنا نقوم بمظاهرات، او ان احنا نعمل فعاليات. انما وجود تنسيقية واسعة بحيث ان القضايا اللي مطروحة يتم تناولها من الشخصيات المتضامنة معانا من خارج مصر، ده بيدي زخم كبير جدا جدا. واظن ان ده هيبقى هو الآلية المهمة جدا لإنفاذ أمنيتنا لتحقيق خارطة الطريق بتاعة الرباط. شكرا.
Shukran, Suzan. I think part of what was so important about the Rabat convening and the contribution that a feminist structural agenda can make in general is that there is space to look at all of these issues together, to see how the connections are so strong between what's happening in Palestine, what's happening in Sudan, in Congo, in Iran, and the need for this dismantling of the imperialist agenda and of corporate capture, which, as we know, are ever more interlinked. Sebastian, and then Eleanor, and then we'll come back to Shireen and the panel. Let me, where did it go? Oh, Sebastian, did you not have a question anymore? Yeah, there we go. Oh, sorry. Let me just allow you to unmute. There you go, if you'd like to come in.
Good afternoon. Thank you. So here, a guy, an ally from all of you. I'm very happy to hear all of the work you have been doing. And I have a question regarding how do we organize ourselves for decision making, and what's your ideas and what are the conclusions from the conference and this roadmap on how we're going to get into the decision making positions and how we're going to be the ones that are going to be moving the agenda from the spaces that decisions are taken. And thank you.
Yeah, thank you. That's a super important question. I think our final respondents, Ale and Trisha, will perhaps address that as we talk about what we need to move forward. Thank you very much. Eleanor?
Hi, everyone. Thank you for this really amazing panel. And I'm excited to dig more into the Rabat Roadmap and see how to bring it into many spaces. I'm just wondering, I think lifting up one of the questions in the Q&A as well, how the discussions have gone or how suggestions you have to address the gender inequality that is both structural and physical violence that's perpetrated through control of bodily autonomy, and especially how that's impacting adolescent girls and women and LGBTQIA+ people. I was just earlier on a call that was talking about the latest UNFPA State of the World Population Report addressing the fertility crisis and how there's so much happening in terms of the far-right ideologies that you've all brought up, and the focus that's happening now in terms of capitalist solutions, saying here are funds to have more babies, or using the fertility crisis, quote unquote, to limit access to contraception and encouraging women to retreat back to unpaid care work. So I'm just wanted to say, I'm committed to raising all these intersections in lots of different spaces, like upcoming meetings on health and climate in Brazil later related to UNFCCC and WHO. I work at Women Deliver, and we have a big conference next year and would love to feature all of this really strongly. And wondering, what suggestions you have to all of us for that. And to put out one last thing, the concept of pleasure and how that can come into this. I know that what we're talking about has very little to do with pleasure, but I think it's an important piece to bring into the conversation so we don't lose sight of where that comes into all of our analysis. Thanks so much.
Thanks so much, Eleanor. Super important linkages. And yeah, also calling attention to Lucinda's question in the chat about also needing to draw connections between the anti-rights, the anti-gender, the anti-trans and queer autonomy agendas with those actors are often very much overlap with anti-climate and anti-justice movements in general. So Shaheen, and then to the panelists, we'll come back to each of you for 1 minute each to respond. Over to you, Shaheen.
Thanks a lot, Katie, and thanks a lot for all my colleagues who spoke before me. It's very important. I appreciate all the interventions and all the view, and it's very important also. And I'm happy that the Rabat Roadmap and the Rabat discussions is coming from the heart of the movement. And the question is here. We are now in the FFD UN space. Colleagues already, like Haneen mentioned, already shed some lights on the SP, and we're going to head to the COP in Brazil, and then and also the annual and the spring meetings of the bank and the fund, etc., etc. Those spaces are there and exists. The thing is that we were all dragged by their agenda for the past years. And we, as the Rabat Roadmap Committee or the Global Feminist Gathering Group, and from my position as MENA Fem director, is how we are going to stop being dragged after their agenda and put our agenda ahead forward. That's why we need to think organizationally, because I am sure that movements are here, movements are taking the lead. But the question here is our positionalities as organizations as well. And I'm here also asking our international organizations, colleagues, because us from the Global South, from Botswana, from Africa, I guess we're doing our part. The question is here is, what about I know there's a lot of groups that are coalitions dragged being like ruled by constituencies, and this discussion need to be there, and to be able to frame this agenda and the priorities of those organizations in a structural way. What is the narrative that we need to produce? What is the political approach that we need to take? And I'm here not only speaking. I know that colleagues were referring a lot to BDS. For me, BDS is a successful campaign on delinking, but that's not all. Or maybe for some contexts, that is not what is needed. Maybe another kind of approach is needed. So here we need to think together, and here we come as activists, as researchers, as academia, feminists, within the context of the Rabat Roadmap and the Rabat Declaration, to think together. But I call here, from this specific platform, I'm calling everybody to think with us and to set the priorities, even if we are not in the same stage, but we are aligned by the declaration and the roadmap. Thank you, and over to you, Katie.
Thank you so much, Shaheen. Really important, linking all of the conversations so far together. Okay, we have 12 minutes left, and we want to hear from Trisha and LA. So if any of the panelists have a burning 1 more minute they want to share, please raise your hand or come off mute. Haneen, 1 minute, please.
Yeah, I'm just like, I have like a couple of answers for like several questions and comments happening during the discussion. The first one relevant to how complicit the UN is, and how we can like intervene the agenda. So UN is very complicit. They don't want to have a proper plan. They are not supportive. They don't give us the space. It's falling, which is a really good thing for us now as movements and as like grassroots organizations to think about the alternative and to come together to build this alternative space. We already starting doing that by like having our hubs, our meetings, our solidarity, our papers, the roadmap that we are talking about. It's like a cross-cutting, and it covering all the global South. The gender challenge in all the negotiations, unfortunately, it's an ongoing fight that we need to go through in every single negotiations, in every space, to mainstream gender talks and LGBTQ plus rights, which is something I cannot believe in like 2025 that we are still fighting for. Like, it's still not a priority on the negotiators' agenda. It's not a priority in the space, and which is like we keep on like fighting to keep it in. How we can like intervene the agenda and how we can like push it. We have successful like trials before, when we had on the ground movement and like on the ground shouting, coming with bilateral and lobbying with key governmental partners and big movements and organizations on the ground. And the justice transition is such a good example now, with like, as constituencies and partners, we work together we did the bilateral meetings, and we did the on-the-ground actions. It's just, unfortunately, there is not one track that we can use. We have like to work across tracks. This is why it is very important currently to widen the movement and to make it more aggressive, more big, and more strategic as well. It has to be like a mix of everything. And honestly, with the failing of the UN system and negotiations, it's the right moment to put what we want to see and how the new system should look like. It's the right moment because they are going to create an alternative thing that is like as failed as the UN system. So if we let them, we are going nowhere. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Haneen. I think that really points to exactly why we are working on creating these alternative spaces in terms of what we think is actually important in the face of these multilateral failures, is that movement building, feminist solidarity, creation of alternatives. Fatna, you have 1 minute, please.
شكرا كاتي. أتمن المداخلات، هي مهمة، وأنا سبق لي تجربة كبيرة في المنتدى الاجتماعي العالمي. كنا نلتقي كثيرا ونلتقي مع المعارضين للعولمة ونلتقي مع أطر كبيرة، ولكن لا نطور سياسات محلية ولا نطور يعني مواجهات في الأرض. نلتقي في باماكو، في تونس مرات عديدة، نلتقي في مكسيكو، في البرازيل، ولكن نأتي إلى بلداننا وكأن شيئا لم يحدث. يعني أن المناضلين المعارضين للعولمة لا يقومون بمثل هذا العمل، وأنا أتمن عمل هذه اللجنة وأحيي شيرين وأحيي كاتي وأحيي كل الأخوات. انطلاقا من مؤتمر رباط أنا حضرت معكم وكنت جد سعيدة، لأنه اليوم بهذه اللقاءات بدأ يتضح لنا ما العمل في الأرض. اتضح الأمم المتحدة، أنا منذ مدة الأمم المتحدة تبدو لي يعني مجال للدردشة وللنقاش وليعرفون أكثر ما هو واقع حالنا، ليس للبحث عن حلول، ولكن فقط ليتحدثوا عن أن هناك إمكانية لصياغة اتفاقية جديدة، وكأن تلك الاتفاقيات لا قدرة لهم على تنفيذها ولا على فرضها. حتى المحكمة الجنائية الدولية لم تستطع اعتقال نتنياهو المجرم ولم تستطع عمل أي شيء. إذن أنا مع التنسيقية التي اقترحت الأخت، يعني مقترح تنسيقية يعني عالمية لمساندة الأخوات في مصر وفي غير مصر. مثلا نحن في المغرب حركة BDS حركة قوية يقودها المناضل السيون أسيدون، وهو من أصول يهودية، وهو يتابع بشكل يومي حركة BDS، والBDS تشتغل في المغرب وتحتج. مؤخرا تم اعتقال بعض المناضلين لأنهم اليوم BDS تقوم بوقفات ضد كارفور، ويتم نشر عدة مواد يجب مقاطعتها، وهناك مقاطعة، لكن مرة تخفت الحركة. إذن كيف نجعل حركة BDS حركة يعني متواصلة بنوع من هذه اللقاءات؟ إذن نحن نحتاج فعلا، أنا مع شيرين، في مقاربات جديدة. نحتاج، لأن هناك من لا يعرف نفسه أنه مستعمر من جديد. يعني لابد أن نفكر في تكوين وفي تأطير مثل ما وقع في مؤتمر الرباط ومثل ما حدث مع مدرسة MENA فهم، يعني أن نرجع ونفهم. مثلا أنا في النقابة عندما نتحدث عن الانتقال العادل لا نجد أن هناك فهم جيد للتغير المناخي. الناس يعتقدون أننا فقط نجلب يعني شركات ويعملوا يعني برامج وستتغير الأمور. لا، يعني حتى في هذا الانتقال العادل لابد أن يكون صوت الطبقة العاملة وصوت النساء وصوت المناضلين، لأنه ليس انتقالا عاديا لحد الساعة، هو انتقال بمنظورهم الرأسمالي وليس بمنظور الشعوب وبمنظور الطبقة العاملة ومنظور النساء. إذن أنا مع أن خارطة الطريق اللي عملناها في الرباط مع الأجندة مع النداء، ولا بد أن يستمر هذا العمل وهذه اللقاءات، لأننا فعلا نطرح بدائل أخرى أكثر تطورا من بدائل المنتدى الاجتماعي العالمي. وتحياتي.
Shukran. Thank you so much, Fatna. Super important concluding points. Thank you again to our panel. We're now going to hear from our respondents to close us out. So first, Trisha Precious Aboli from Akina Mamawa Africa, and then Ale Talbi from FTDS will close us out. Thank you so much. And Trisha, over to you.
Thank you, panelists. Thank you, Katie, for this. I think I really enjoyed the conversation and the questions coming in. My thoughts are just around, will be based on apologies, I can't start my video. I have a problem with my camera, something going on. So my thoughts will really come from the question of who defines development, but also looking at who has the right to develop and who doesn't have the right to develop. Because when you look at the current financial institutions, is that this right is sort of well spelled out, that there is the person who must develop over time, and from time immemorial, this has been the norm, and there is the person that must finance that development. And this has been done through so many punitive acts, which continue to come up in different international policies, but also international conventions that really come about. Of course, we do know that from the outcome document during FFD is that not much is going to really come to save us. And so we must then go back to our alternatives and keep pushing for those. I know that, of course, the FFD has several gaps, but one of the highlighting one that have been really discussed by the panelists is the one on it has no binding debt cancellation. Like, it doesn't have any binding clause on debt cancellation, but it really just promises debt sustainability frameworks. So it's really just a reinstatement of the controls. So we are really not seeing something that is going to give us any change per se. But also we see that in that document, climate finance is really still tied to loans and private financing rather than being termed as reparation and grants. And so, of course, in the continuation of the grand scheme of things of the hierarchical oppression is that this then hints on how the implementation moving forward will be. And of course, we also know that it does not talk about anything to do with wealth taxes or cracking down of tax evasions and all the tax violations that happen, but really just gives it as a suggestion of cooperation, like voluntary cooperation of the rich, which is something the feminist movement has overly stated, that we do need a wealth tax system that needs to decenter the hoarding of money in one particular group, which is the 1% of the population on Earth. And if we had to talk about the right to development, because if we keep saying that everyone has the right to life, then everyone must have the right to development. But also, like Gina says, is that this right should also be termed together with the right to self-determine, the right to self-sovereignty. And communities must be able to choose what they want to develop and how they want to develop. And it should be very cordial to the people's needs and the people's determinations. But also we know that the document is very silent on demilitarization, something that we tried to push for before it went silent, before the time when it went silent, is that despite the ongoing wars, it still continues to remain silent. And yet we know that most of these wars are happening in the global south. So for this, we know that the Rabat declaration sort of comes to give, of course, we must term the document, the FFD document, as another elite compromise that really just continues to ignore the rights and needs of the global south communities, but also feminist alternatives that have been pushed for so long. And so for this, we must take ourselves, I think one of the things that I would want to say is that we must continue to push for feminist alternatives out of the boardrooms, but also to acknowledge that change is not going to happen in some of these documents, because some of the documents are produced by systems or structures that continue to create a hierarchical oppressive system. And so that will not be our battleground, but our battleground will be in our homes, in our communities, but also the fight that we continue, the solidarity that we continue to build together as networks, but also to rebel or protest against the continued violation that is happening on the planet is something that we must continue doing. And I think for me, the Rabat vision, the declaration's vision is very clear that it demands for development, not as defined by the international institutions like IMF and UN, but it demands for development that looks at liberation of the planet, essentially, from debt, war, and really corporate rule, and the corporate capture that comes from the rich 1%. And we must continue advancing these alternatives away from the weak war rooms or battlegrounds that only help or only cocoon a few people or protect a few people vis-a-vis the 99%. And that can't continue to happen. And so I think some of the alternatives that we must look at is under climate finance, we must continue to reject this green debt, because for a planet that provides natural resources, we can no longer continue that someone owes you for existing or someone owes you for being part of the ecosystem. And so one of the solutions that sort of Gina mentions is to center global South feminist epistemologies that prioritize, for example, our histories, our lived realities, but also our community-led research and knowledge. But we should also challenge the narrative of best practice, and I'm putting this in quotes, by rejecting the idea that one shoe fits all under frameworks or conventions that are really put forward by international institutions. But we should rather demand for systems of change and not project-based fixes. So we can no longer continue saying that the private sector should, when they will, provide climate financing, for example. We can no longer be moving under that narrative. The global South the global North and the private sector often pushes solutions of small political gender projects like clean cooking, solar lamps for all African women or solar lamps for all global South women, but also the narrative of renewable energy, and without even defining who is providing this renewable energy, but where is this transition happening in a system that's already flawed? So we must continue trying to break down the actual systems of oppression. The systemic change has to happen for us to even move anywhere, for us to see even any changes. And in terms of the FFD document, yes, I'm wrapping up, is to say that the document will not save us, again, like I said, but we must also continue rejecting false solutions. The sustainable austerity that the document is trying to push forward is a narrative that we must continue debunking, but also challenging in our own capacities, but also using our very own knowledge and our lived realities. But lastly, I wanted to respond to Eleanor on the issue of pleasure and development, and to say, yes, the two are very much linked, because we cannot talk about development without talking about bodies, because bodies are really the center of development. They provide labor, they provide thinking, they provide the progress that is meant to happen. And if this progress is only happening in the self-determination needed for development is only happening by the 1%, then that can no longer be considered development. But a development agenda should really look at bodily autonomy and reproductive health as core subjects for development to happen, because bodies on which development is happening must be well, must have access and equal access. So we can no longer move under the narrative of neoliberal development policies that continue to criminalize LGBTQ laws, but also continue to militarize or politicize women's bodies. So we must continue also challenging the reproductive health and rights issue with women.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Trisha, and thank you to Akina Mamawa Africa for always being at the forefront of all of the perspectives that you just shared, including the feminist alternatives, and making the links to bodily autonomy as well as the structural issues. Sorry that we've gone over time, folks. Grateful if you can stay for just 5 more minutes so we can hear from Ale Talbi. Sorry, Ale, to keep you waiting. Thank you for your patience, everyone. But it'll be really important to hear Ale close us out. So over to you. Thank you so much.
شكرا جزيلا، شكرا لكل الرفيقات على هذا التشخيص وعلى هذا يعني الوفاء لما حدث في الرباط والإعلان الرباط. أظن أنه هناك أريد أن أضع الأمور في سياقها يمكن السياسي العالمي، لأنه أظن هذا مهم جدا، لأنه أعتبر أنه نحن اليوم في عالم يتأرجح بين أزمات عديدة، يعني من التغير المناخي إلى تصاعد الديون إلى الحروب إلى الأوبئة. وأظن أن هنا في هذا الإطار يعني تبرز العدالة النسوية كإطار تحليلي ونضالي قادر على تقديم بدائل جذرية تتجاوز الحلول الجزئية، الحلول التجميلية، لأنه احنا لم نطرح على أنفسنا كما قلت مجرد إصلاحات تجميلية، وإنما نحن نعيد أو نطمح إلى إعادة رسم خريطة النفوذ الاقتصادي والسياسي العالمي من خلال الاستناد إلى تجارب حية، تجارب دول الجنوب، والتي ازدادت أهمية خاصة بعد 7 أكتوبر، لأنه نعتبرها ما قبل 7 أكتوبر هو شيء وما بعده هناك إعلان تقريبا لتغيرات عديدة في هذا العالم. وأهم هذه التغيرات أظن أنه هناك ما يكفي من التجارب في دول الجنوب حتى نقوم بتقاطع نضالاتها، وحتى تبرز أكثر لتقديم بدائل تنبع من الأرض، تنبع من نضالات النساء والشعوب، ولكن أيضا هي نضالات تهدف إلى التغيير المجتمعي. أظن أنه أيضا إعلان الرباط وما قمنا به هو طموح مشروع لبناء عالم قائم على عدالة النسوية، ولكن أيضا هو صرخة ضد يبدأ من أصوات النساء في القرى البعيدة النائية ضد تغير المناخ، إلى نضالات العاملات في القطاعات الغير المهيكلة، إلى شعوب تناضل ضد الاحتلال والعسكرة، وهي تجارب لا يمكن الفصل بينها، لأنها كلها معناها صراعات وكلها نضالات من أجل كما قلت تغيير، ومن أجل عالم أفضل نطمح ونرنو إليه جميعا. أظن من المفيد أن نطرح 3 نقاط برقية سريعا. لماذا أولا من السياق إلى الموقف، لماذا هذا الإعلان، ولماذا هذه التجربة، ولماذا هذا اللقاء؟ أظن أن إعلاننا انبثق من تلاقي نضالي شاركت فيه نسويات وناشطون وناشطات من المنطقة العربية والأفريقية والآسيوية وأمريكا اللاتينية، تراكمت خبراتها عبر سنوات عديدة من الفعل الميداني، من الفعل التحليلي، من الفعل المقاوم، وولد في لحظة عالمية نشترك فيها ونشترك في تشخيصها، تتميز بمضاعفة أزمة الديون كأداة استعمارية لإخضاع الجنوب من جديد، انهيار منظومات الصحة والتعليم والرعاية، تسويق التحول المناخي كأداة استعمار أخضر جديد، وخاصة أو أخيرا الربط أيضا العنيف بين النهب الاقتصادي وبين العسكرة كما رأيناه في فلسطين، في السودان، في اليمن، وفي دول عديدة. إعلاننا يقول أن هناك رؤية تحررية نسوية جذرية يمكن أن تكون ويمكن أن نطمح إليها ويمكن أن نقررها معا. هذا الإعلان لا يتوقف عند التشخيص والإدانة، نحن شخصنا، نحن تحدثنا، ولكن نحن نتجاوز لتقديم مشروع سياسي واضح، مشروع متكامل يقوم على العدالة الجندرية والبيئية والاجتماعية والاقتصادية، ويجب أن نكون هنا بصوت عالي أن ما نقوم به ليس كما قلت ليس مجرد إصلاح. هذا المشروع يتلخص يمكن في 3 محاور مترابطة عبر تفكيك أدوات الهيمنة الاقتصادية، عبر العدالة المناخية لا العدالة الاستعمارية، وعبر تحرر سياسي ومقاومة للعسكرة في كل مكان، ولكن أيضا ينطلق من مخبر هو مخبر الجنوب، مخبر العدالة النسوية، عبر تجارب عشناها ونعيشها كل يوم، سواء في أوغندا حيث تميزت العدالة المناخية من منظور نسوي بالتدريب السياسي والتأطير المجتمعي والتحالفات الإقليمية باتجاه نموذج بيئي عادل يعيد توزيع السلطة والموارد ويركز على الرعاية والعيش الكريم وليس على النمو الربحي، أو في المغرب حيث شاهدنا نضالا نقابيا نسويا في وجه التقشف، أو في أمريكا اللاتينية حيث الاقتصاد البديل ومنظور التبادل، والأهم خاصة في فلسطين حيث نرى مقاومة استعمارية نسوية تأخذ من خلالها العدالة النسوية أبعادا متعددة، فهي نضال ضد الاحتلال وضد التهميش السياسي وضد القيود الأبوية والاجتماعية، حيث يجسدنا هؤلاء النساء الفلسطينيات نموذجا متكاملا للمقاومة النسوية التي ترفض الفصل بين النضال الوطني والاجتماعي وتطالب بالكرامة والحرية والعدالة في آن واحد، وهو تداخل في كل هذه القضايا السياسية والاجتماعية والاقتصادية يعكس مدى شمولية رؤيتنا ويعكس أيضا مدى رغبتنا النسوية في التحرر. أظن أن أيضا هذا السؤال يمكن الأخير الذي نمر إليه هو ماذا نحتاج اليوم بعد هذا الإعلان، بعد هذه الرؤية. نحتاج أيضا يمكن إلى تنظيم، نحتاج ليس فقط كما قلت إلى الاعتراف بنا نحن كحركات ميدانية أو أكاديمية أو صناعي سياسات أو مجتمع مدني، وإنما نحتاج إلى ترجمة كل ما نقوله إلى برامج عمل وطنية وإقليمية. نحتاج أيضا إلى إنتاج معرفة من الجنوب وبالجنوب بكسر التبعية المعرفية، وهو مهم جدا حتى يمكن أن نواصل نضالاتنا. نحتاج إلى أيضا تقاطع بين الحركات النسوية والعمالية والبيئية، لأن النضالات المشتتة تستهلك وتهزم. نحتاج أيضا إلى التقاطع بين كل هذه الحركات والحركات الكويرية والحركات الإنسانية في كل هذا الوطن. نحتاج إلى تعزيز التضامن بين الجنوب جنوب على أسس فعالة تتجاوز فقط اللقاءات الصورية والصور الختامية. نحتاج إلى لغة جديدة وسردية جديدة تسمي الأشياء بمسمياتها، فنحن نرفض استعمارا جديدا اسمه تمويل مناخي مشروط، ونحن نرفض نظاما استعماريا رأسماليا يتغذى من أجساد النساء، ونحن نرفض نخبا محلية تسوق للهيمنة باسم التنمية، ونحن نرفض أيضا مؤسسات دولية تلبس الإفقار لبؤس الإصلاح الاقتصادي. فلنحمل أدواتنا معنا، فلنحمل أفكارنا معنا كأداة مقاومة وكورقات سياسات وكوثيقة نضال شعبية نضعها على طاولة الحوار، نضعه أيضا في الشارع، نضعه في الأعلام، نضعها في المعامل، نضعه في الحقول، ونستند إليها من أجل إكمال نضالاتنا. شكرا.
شكرا جدا يا علاء. Thanks a lot, علاء. And I guess we're perfectly where we needed to be in this moment. And yes, we need to carry our tools, our strategies, because we're always carrying our heart and souls. We need to carry them to fields, to factories, to universities, to our own organizations and our own movements. And I don't think that there is any other alternative at this moment. While the whole world is changing and the system is trying to give the last breath to the global economical structure, the dead horse. And we see it as it is. It's not the elephant in the room for us. That's why we are acting now. And thank you for sharing all the insights and thoughts that we as the roadmap committee will integrate and share with every one of you who attended this meeting, and of course with our global convening, feminist convening group, and to be able to take it back and to come with projects and road that really works for people. If we really speaking about the governance of the system, that we cannot speak about this system anymore. We need to speak about our own system. They took their chances, and I think that we have a chance together. We have a chance to talk to our governments, Our colleagues in the North need to talk to their governments. We have a chance to work politically. It is very political, and it's not a shame to say it. It is political. So we have to work very close together with the political movements, with the academia, with the civil society, hand in hand. Thanks a lot for bearing with us. Thanks a lot for my colleagues, co-organizers, for my colleague Katie, and for the speakers, and hope to see you soon. Thank you. And for the translators, of course, I'm so sorry. Katie.
Thank you so much, Shaheen. Thank you everyone for your patience and for sticking with us. Stay tuned for the Rabat Declaration and for further conversations. We're really grateful to be in community and solidarity with all of you. Take care.